Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soulful Intuitive. Today, we're going to cover a topic that's very dear and near to me. It is the topic of visualization. I have been using this technique to manifest what is important to me, and what I would like to see in my uh, world. I've been using it since I was very young, unknowingly. And then I started reading up on this technique and the art of manifestation. And it started off as just vision boards, just clipping whatever that inspired me. And when I was younger, I was very inspired by just beautiful images and of people, places, things. And then it morphed into concepts, joy, happiness, peace, harmony. And I know for sure that this technique works. I have brought in so many things into my life, and I have all my journals that I used to write in. And I remember that I had a session with a mentor many years ago, and she told me to be very specific in terms of what I want. And when I was very young, in my early 20s, I think one of the most important things to me was to be in love and experience that. I had heard about it, I read about it, and yet I hadn't experienced it. And I would sit at a coffee shop and get my journal, and I would write in details exactly what I wanted. And I was being very corny also because I loved romantic comedies, and I always wanted the impossible in terms of romance. I wanted something that wasn't necessarily on the shelf, for me at least, in my early 20s, and coming out of the closet and joining my LGBTQ community. I quickly realized that it's not a fantasy, and it's not any easier for the heterosexuals than it is for homosexuals. In fact, it is, in my opinion, more difficult because the standards and what we were sold on in terms of who we should seek and what is the standard of beauty, and the lack of role models, the lack of movies and books and material that would help individuals daydream and go out of their way to create it. Uh, Certainly, again, my humble opinion was a contributing factor to me finding it more difficult. So I would almost on a daily write down what I wanted, and in terms of looks, from very vain, superficial aspect to the personality, to what I wanted to do with my partner. For example, I would just write down that we would get up together and go to a close closest coffee shop, sit there, drink our coffee, and read the newspaper and exchange looks, and to going traveling, to um, move into our common first apartment or first place, to going to each other's families' houses, and which, again, it was a dream in my early 20s because I certainly did not see that happening in my family, since the process was a long process of coming out and making them feel comfortable and having them get used to the idea that it doesn't matter what I bring home. It's just, as they say, love is love. But didn't stop me from dreaming, didn't stop me from writing. And it was the best part of my day because when I was writing it in my journal, I would instantly move into the world of fantasy. And as we all know, our brain doesn't know the difference between reality and fantasy. So all the feelings would come up and all the good hormones would be secreted in my bloodstream. And by the time I was done writing it, I was in a much better mindset. And it went on and on and on for quite a few years. And I would get very close to the dream that I had, and it wouldn't work out. And until it did work out. And when we were moving in together into our first apartment, I came across one of my journals from many years ago, and I read it out loud for him, and he was very surprised as what details I had put in there and how much similarities were between him and what I consciously had ordered to the universe. Even though when I ordered it, I was familiar with the concept, but I didn't really have first hand experience. So therefore, it was more of wishful thinking than the actual knowing. And even though a few things had already come to pass and had already manifested in my life, as human beings, we just want more and more and more examples and more proof. So I have shared this technique with a lot of my friends. My best friend came to my house one day and saw one wall being completely covered with the images, and then she actually asked me, "Does it really work?" And I said, "Yes." And I think that was it for her. So she started her own. So life is very interesting, and living in this world can be very magical if we allow it to be. And sometimes when life is dark and when life is bleak, we just don't have the energy. We feel down, we feel depressed, and we feel like nothing's ever going to get better. And it's actually in those times that we need to tap into our fantasy world, into the world of dreams, and spend a good chunk of time there. And I'm not saying that just live in dream world all day long, but dream is nothing more than amazing positive thoughts and something that we're not seeing in front of us necessarily, but we can see it in our mind first. And that's what the mind is for, because mind is nothing but a software, as a tool. It could cause us anxiety and fear and all the things that mind's really good at, but it is also very good at allowing us to delve into the dreamland, which only exists in our head, and it is real. There is a line from Harry Potter, the last part where he was killed, and he found himself at the train station with Professor Dumbledore, and he asked him if this is all real. or is it all in my head? And he said, well, of course it's in your head, but that doesn't mean that it's not real. And that's exactly what visualization is. It's real, and it starts in our head. And I would also highly recommend people writing with their hand, with a pen or pencil in a journal, as opposed to typing it, because I feel like something is magical when you hold your pen and you put your thoughts in writing. So a few things that I want to share, because I always like reading those books that had examples. It was my favorite part, all the self-help books that, oh, Mary was this and that, and then Mary did this, and then it happened, and it all kind of just gives you hope that happy ending is in the horizon. So when my partner and I were looking for our first apartment, we were very aware of the fact that we can't afford the rental fees in the city that we live in, because it's one of the most expensive cities. And I had written in my journal as I wanted to be spacious, and I wanted to be nice, and I wanted to be affordable, and I wanted actually to be under $1,000, so both of us can afford it. And we looked and looked and looked on Craigslist, and we came across this ad that was about this apartment that seemed too good to be true. So I called and made an appointment, and I went to see it. And sure, it was exactly the area that we were interested in. It had like a really good view of the water. However, the last tenant had a hobby. He had quite a few pigeons that we were told he was feeding. And when he left the door open, and the pigeons had moved in and pooped all over the apartment. And the landlord didn't know that he had done the overnight move. So the damage was a lot, and the balcony had a hole in it because the pigeon poop's super acidic, and it had like eaten through the wood. And it was an older building due for a renovation. So I'm sure maybe the wood was not the sturdiest, but nonetheless, the apartment was a disaster, and the landlord didn't really want to go through the extensive renovation. So I met up with them, and um, they agreed to give that apartment to us for $900 a month, which was unheard of. And I asked them to just remove the carpet because it was nasty, and then we just laid down our own flooring, went on YouTube, watched the video, went to Home Depot, bought the cheapest stuff they had on sale, and laid down the floor. So that was one of the stories of what happens when you visualize. And another one was, of course, meeting my partner. And by the way, what I had written, I totally had forgotten about, because I wrote and wrote and wrote until I gave up, and I just stopped writing. And but I kept my journals, and when we were moving in together, we were going through what we keep and what we throw out, because it was, a small apartment. And I wanted to throw out the journals, and then he went through it, and he was like, "No, no, no, keep these." And I just flipped through it just to remind myself what it was, and then I came across this like a long pages of me my order sheets, basically, to the universe, that I, from like, the way, like the mannerism, and the background, and the way in which we communicate, and the way in which we are affectionate, and how we have fun, and what kind of things we do together. And every time I get I get down because we're always looking for the next project, and I'm not necessarily very patient. So every time I get impatient, and every time I am about to lose faith, I just think about that. And I actually wrote a long list of what visualization and good, happy stories about manifestation, and I put it on my board in our room. So every time I walk by it, I see it, and it's a quick uplifting method when, especially the days that you're dragging and you don't have the energy, or you don't even have the hope to go on that day to fight for what you want to achieve. And I highly recommend it. I'm sure it's been talked about many, many times, but clearly not enough, because I still come across people who have never heard of it. And I still come across people who don't believe in it and don't also feel or have the discipline to do it. And I certainly feel like I used to do a lot more of that when I was younger, because as you're young, you're building a life, and you want love, and you want like to travel, and there's like you want to like look a certain way, and you want to build a career, and as I get older, I feel like I do less of those, because I feel like maybe the necessary items were checked off my list, but even I have to remind myself not to get lazy and put pen in the paper and write the things down, because we never stop wanting. And sometimes what we want isn't necessarily good for us. So, regardless of how many times you put it in writing, it won't happen. And as we get older, we look back and we go, "Oh, thank God that didn't happen," because then, with the wisdom and with the passage of time, we realize that certain things that we thought was good for us, in fact, wasn't. So that is pretty much what I wanted to touch base on. And we will come back to this many, many times, because it is such an important topic, and an exciting one for me and for a lot of people that I know, because it is almost like magic, except that your wand is your pen or pencil, and and there are no limits. You can dream big, and as long as you manifest it and you give it power by visualizing, by be very specific, by really seeing yourself there, it will happen, unless, like we covered, the universe has better plans for you, because sometimes, actually a lot of times, we don't have the vision from the top to see what's good for us, and we're just stuck in this like circle of like, oh, like for example, I want to be famous, and then when you get older and you just watch all the famous people around you talking about how the fame was the worst part of their experience, and then you go on, just thank the universe for not bringing fame in your life. And that's just it was just an example that popped into my head, because the social media has brought fame into a lot of people, and people just like live for likes and just screen time, and then some people love it, but a lot of people don't. Oh, and that's just the time telling me that I need to wrap it up. So have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon.